Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and One Night. Now, when it was the 550th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Sindbad the Seaman thus continued. Alhamdulillah, quoth the captain, lauded be Allah, who hath restored unto thee thy goods and gear. Then I disposed of my merchandise to the best of my skill, and profited largely on them, whereat I rejoiced with exceeding joy, and congratulated myself on my safe and the recovery of my goods. We ceased not to buy and sell at the several islands until we came to a land of Hind, where we bought cloves and ginger and all manner of spices, and thence we fared on to the land of Sind, where we also bought and sold. In these Indian seas I saw wonders without number or count, amongst others a fish like a cow, which bringeth forth its young and suckleth them like human beings, and of its skin bucklers are made. There were eke fishes like asses and camels, and tortoises 20 cubits wide. And I also saw a bird that cometh out of a shell, and layeth eggs, and hatcheth her chicks on the surface of the water, never coming up from the sea to the land. Then we set sail again with a fair wind and the blessings of Almighty Allah, and after a prosperous voyage arrived safe and sound at Basra. Here I abode a few days, and presently returned to Baghdad, where I went at once to my quarter and my house, and saluted my family, and familiars and friends. I had gained on this voyage what was beyond count and reckoning, so I gave alms and largesse, and clad the widow and the orphan by way of thanksgiving for my happy return, and fell to feasting and making merry with my companions and intimates, and I forgot while eating well and drinking well and dressing well and everything that had befallen me, and all the perils and hardships I had suffered. These then are the most admirable things I cited on my third voyage, and tomorrow I will relate the tales of my fourth voyage, which is still more wonderful than those I have already told you, saith he who telleth the tale. Then Sinbad the seaman bade give Sinbad the landsman 100 golden dinars as of wont, and called for food. So they spread the tables, and the company ate the night meal and went their ways, marvelling at the tale they had heard. The porter, after taking his gold, passed the night in his own house, also wondering on what his namesake the seaman had told him. And as soon as day broke and the morning showed with its sheen and shone, he rose, and praying the dawn prayer, betook himself to Sindbad the seaman, who returned his salute, and received him with an open breast and cheerful favour, and made him sit with him till the rest of the company arrived, when he caused set on food, and they ate, and they drank, and made merry. Then Sindbad the seaman bespake, and related to them the narrative of the fourth tale of the voyage of Sindbad the seaman. Know, O my brethren, that after my return from my third voyage, and foregathering with my friends, and forgetting all my perils and hardships in the enjoyment of the ease and comfort and repose, I was once visited one day by a company of merchants, who sat down with me and talked of foreign travel and traffic, till the old man within me yearned to go with them, and enjoy the sight of the strange countries, and I longed for the society of the various races of mankind, and for traffic and profit. So I resolved to travel with them, and buying the necessaries for the long voyage and great store of costly goods, more than ever before, transported them from Baghdad to Basra, where I took ship with the merchants in question, who were the chief of the town. We set out, trusting in the blessing of Almighty Allah, and with a favoring breeze and the best conditions, we sailed from island to island and sea to sea, till one day there arose against us a contrary wind, and the captain cast out his anchors and brought the ship to a standstill, fearing lest we should founder into mid-ocean. Then we all fell to praying and humbling ourselves before the most mighty Allah. But as we were thus engaged, there smote us a furious squall, which tore the sails to rags and tatters. The anchor cable parted, and the ship foundering, we were cast into the sea, goods and all. I kept myself afloat by swimming half the day, till when I had given myself up for lost, the Almighty threw in my way one of the planks of the ship, whereon I and some other of the merchants scrambled. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 551st night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Sinbad the sailor continued as follows. And when the ship foundered, I scrambled onto a plank with some others of the merchants, and mounting it as if we would a horse, paddled with our feet in the sea. We abode thus a day and a night, the wind and the waves helping us on, and on the second day, shortly before the midtime between sunrise and noon, the breeze freshened, and the sea wrought the rising waves, cast upon us an island, well nigh dead bodies for weariness and want of sleep, cold and hunger and fear and thirst. We walked about the shore and found abundance of herbs, whereof we ate enough to keep breath and body, and to stay our failing spirits. Then we lay down, and we slept till morning, hard by the sea. And when morning came with its sheen and shone, we arose and walked about the island to the right and the left, till we came in sight of an inhabited house afar off. So we made towards it, and ceased not walking till we reached the door thereof, when lo, a number of naked men issued from it, and without saluting us or a word said, laid hold of us masterfully, and carried us into their king, who signed us to sit. So we sat down, and they set food before us, such as we never knew not, and whose like we had never seen in all of our lives. My companions ate of it for stress of hunger, but my stomach revolted from it, and I would not eat. And my refraining from it was by Allah's favor, the cause of my being alive till now. For no sooner had my comrades tasted of it, than their reason fled, and their condition changed, and they began to devour it like madmen, possessed of an evil spirit. Then the savages gave them to drink of a cocoa-nut oil, and anointed them therewith, and straightway, after drinking thereof, their eyes turned up into their heads, and they fell to eating greedily against their wont. When I saw this, I was confounded and concerned for them. Nor was I less anxious about myself for fear of the naked folk. So I watched them narrowly, and it was not long before I discovered them to be a tribe of Magian cannibals, whose king was a Ghuls. All who came to their country, or whoso they caught in their valleys or on their roads, they brought to this king, and fed them upon that food, and anointed them with that oil, whereupon their stomachs dilated that they might eat largely, whilst their reason fled, and they lost the power of thought, and became idiots. Then they stuffed them with cocoa-nut oil, and the aforesaid food, till they became fat and gross, when they slaughtered them by cutting their throats and roasting them for the king's eating. But as for the savages themselves, they ate human flesh raw. When I saw this, I was sore dismayed for myself and my comrades, who were now being so stupefied that they knew not what was done with them, and the naked folk committed them to one who used every day to lead them out and pasture them on the island like cattle. And they wandered amongst the trees and rested at will, thus waxing very fat. As for me, I wasted away and became sickly for fear and hunger, and my flesh shriveled on my bones, which when the savages saw, they left me alone and took no thought of me, and so far forgot me that one day I gave them the slip, and walking out of their place, made for the beach, which was distant, and there espied a very old man, seated on a high place, girt by the waters. I looked at him, and knew him for a herdsman, who had charge of pasturing my fellows. With him were many others in like case. As soon as he saw me, he knew me to be in possession of my reason, and not afflicted like the rest whom he was pasturing, so signed to me from afar, as who should say, Turn back, and take the right-hand road, for that will lead thee into the king's highway. So I turned back as he bade me, and I followed the right-hand road, now running for fear, and then walking leisurely to rest me, till I was out of the old man's sight. By this time The sun had gone down, and the darkness set in, so I sat down to rest, and would have slept. But sleep came not to me that night, for stress of fear and famine and fatigue. When the night was half spent, I rose and walked on till the day broke in all its beauty, and the sun rose over the heads of the lofty hills and thwart the low gravelly plains. Now I was weary and hungry, so I ate my fill of herbs and grasses that grew in the island, and kept life in body, and stayed my stomach, after which I set out again, and fared all that day to the next right, staying my greed with roots and herbs. Nor did I cease walking for 7 days and their nights, till the morn of the 8th day, when I caught sight of a faint object in the distance. So I made towards it, though my heart quaked for all I had suffered first and last. And behold, it was a company of men gathering pepper grains. So as soon as they saw me, they hastened up to me, and surrounding me on all sides, said to me, Who art thou, and whence come? And I replied, Know, O my folk, that I am a poor stranger, and acquainted them with my case, and all the hardships and perils that I had suffered. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 552nd night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Sindbad the seaman continued, and the men gathering pepper in the island questioned me of my case. When I acquainted them with all the hardships and perils I had suffered, and how I had fled from the savages, whereat they marveled, and gave me joy of my safety, saying, By Allah, this is wonderful! But how dost thou escape from these blacks who swarm in the island, and devour all who fall in with them? Nor is any safe from them, nor can any get out of their clutches. And after I had told them the fate of my companions, they made me sit by them till they got quit of their work, and fetched me somewhat of good food, which I ate, for I was hungry. And I rested a while, after which they took ship with me, and carrying me to their island home, brought me before their king, who returned my salute, and received me honorably, and questioned me of my case. I told him all that had befallen me from the day of my leaving Baghdad city, whereupon he wondered with great wonder at my adventures, he and his courtiers, and he bade me sit by him. Then he called for food, and I ate with him what sufficeth me, and I washed my hands, and returned thanks to Almighty Allah for all his favors, praising him and glorifying him. Then I left the king, and walked for solace about the city, which I found wealthy and populous, abounding in market streets, well stocked with food and merchandise, and full of buyers and sellers. So I rejoiced at having reached so pleasant a place, and took my ease there after my fatigues. And I made friends with the townfolks. Nor was it long before I became more in honor and favor with them and their king than any of the chief men of the realm. Now I saw that all the citizens, great and small, rode fine horses, high-priced, and thoroughbreds, without saddles or housings, whereat I wondered, and I said to the king, Wherefore, O my lord, dost thou not ride with a saddle? Therein is ease for the rider and increase of power. What is a saddle? Asked he. I never saw nor used such a thing in all my life. And I answered, With thy permission, I will make thee a saddle, that thou mayest ride on it, and see the comfort thereof. And quoth he, Do so. So quoth I to him, Furnish me with some wood. Which being brought, I sought me a clever carpenter, and sitting by him, showed him how to make the saddle tree, portraying for him the fashion thereof, and the ink and the wood. Then I took wool, and teased it, and made felt of it, and covering the saddle tree with leather, stuffed it, and polished it, and attached the girth and the stirrup leathers. After which I fetched a blacksmith, and I described to him the fashion of the stirrups and the bridle bit. So he forged a fine pair of stirrups and a bit, and filed them smooth, and tinned them. Moreover, I made fast to them fringes of silk, and fitted bridle leathers to the bit. Then I fetched one of the best of the royal horses, and saddling and bridling him, hung the stirrups to the saddle, and led him to the king. The thing took his fancy, and he thanked me. Then he mounted, and rejoiced greatly in the saddle, and rewarded me handsomely for my work. When the king's wazir saw the saddle, he asked of me one like it, and I made one for him. Furthermore, all the grandees and the officers of state came for saddles to me, so I fell to making saddles, having taught the craft to the carpenter and the blacksmith, and selling them to all who sought, till I amassed great wealth, and became in high honor and great favor with the king and his households and his grandees. I abode thus till one day, as I was sitting with the king in all respect and contentment, he said to me, Know thou, O such an one, thou art become one of us, dear as a brother, and we hold thee in such regard and affection that we cannot part with thee, nor suffer thee to leave our city. Wherefore I desire of thee obedience in a certain matter, and I will not have thee gainsay of me. Answered I, O king, what is it that thou desirest of me? Far be it from me to gainsay thee in aught, for I am indebted to thee for many favors and bounties, and much kindness, and praised be Allah. I am become one of thy servants. Quoth he, I have a mind to marry thee to a fair, clever, and agreeable wife, who is wealthy as well as she is beautiful, so thou mayest be naturalized and domiciled with us. I will lodge thee with me in my palace. Wherefore oppose me not, neither cross me in this. When I heard these words, I was ashamed and held my peace, nor could make him any answer by reason of my much bashfulness before him. Asked he, Why dost thou not reply to me, O my son? And I answered him, O my master, it is thine to command, O king of the age. So he summoned the Kazi and the witness, and married me straightway to a lady of a noble tree and high pedigree, wealthy in moneys and means, the flower of an ancient race, of surpassing beauty and grace, and the owner of farms and estates, and many of a dwelling place. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 553rd night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Sinbad the seaman continued in these words. Now after the king my master had married me to his choice wife, he also gave me a great and goodly house standing alone, together with slaves and officers, and assigned me pay and allowances. So I became in all ease and contentment and delight, and forgot everything which had befallen me of weariness and trouble and hardship. For I loved my wife with fondest love, and she loved me no less. And we were as one, and abode in the utmost comfort of life and in its happiness. And I said to myself, When I return to my native land, I will carry her with me. But whatso is predestined to a man, that needs must be, and none knoweth what shall befall him. We lived thus a great while, till Almighty Ali bereft one of my neighbors of his wife. Now he was a gossip of mine, so hearing the cry of the keeners, I went in to console him on his loss, and found him in a very ill plight, full of trouble and weary of soul and mind. I condoled with him and comforted him, saying, Mourn not for thy wife, who hath now found the mercy of Allah. The Lord will surely give thee a better in her stead, and in thy name shall be great, and thy life shall be long in the land, Inshallah. But he wept bitter tears, and replied, O my friend, how can I marry another wife? And how shall Allah replace her to me with a better than she, whenas I have but one day left to live? O my brother, said I, return to thy senses, and announce not the glad tidings of thine own death, for thou art well, sound, and in good case. By thy life, O my friend, rejoined he, tomorrow thou wilt lose me, and wilt never see me again till the day of resurrection. I asked, How so? And he answered, This very day they bury my wife, and they bury me with her in one tomb. For it is the custom with us, if the wife die first, to bury the husband alive with her, and in like manner the wife, if the husband die first, so that neither may enjoy life after losing his or her mate. By Allah, cried I, this is the most vile, lewd custom, and not to be endured of any. Meanwhile, behold, the most part of the townsfolk came in and fell to condoling with my gossip for his wife and for himself. Presently they laid the dead woman out, as was their wont, and settling her on a bier, carried her and her husband without the city till they came to a place in the side of the mountain, at the end of the island by the sea. And here they raised a great rock, and discovered the mouth of a stone-riveted pit or well, leading down into a vast underground cavern that ran beneath the mountain. Into this pit they threw the corpse. Then, tying a rope of palm fibers under the husband's armpits, they let him down into the cavern. And with but a greater pitcher of fresh water and 7 stones by way of viacum, when he came to the bottom, he loosed himself from the rope, and they drew it up, and stopping the mouth of the pit with a great stone, they returned to the city, leaving my friend in the cavern with his dead wife. When I saw this, I said to myself, by Allah, this fashion of death is more grievous than the first. And when I went into the king and said to him, O my lord, why do you bury the quick with the dead? Quoth he, It hath been the customs, thou must know, of our forebears and our olden kings from time immemorial. If the husband die first, to bury his wife with him, and the like with the wife, so we may never sever them, alive or dead. I asked, O king of the age, if the wife of a foreigner like myself die among you, deal ye with me as with yonder man? And he answered, Assuredly, we do with him even as thou hast seen. When I heard this, my gallbladder was like to burst, for the violence of my dismay and concern for myself. My wit became dazed. I felt as if a vile dungeon, and hated their society, for I went about in fear lest my wife should die before me, and they bury me alive with her. However, after a while I comforted myself, saying, Happily I shall predecease her, or shall have returned to my own land before she die, for none knoweth which shall go first, or which shall go last. Then I applied myself to diverting my mind from this thought, and with various occupations. But it was not long before my wife sickened, and complained, and took to her pillow, and fared after a few days to the mercy of Allah. And the king and the rest of the folk came, as was their wont, to condole with me and her family, and to console us with her loss, and not less to condole with me for myself. Then the women washed her, and arraying her in her richest raiment, and golden ornaments, necklaces, and jewelry, laid her on the bier, and bore her to the mountain aforesaid, where they lifted the cover of pit, and cast her in. After which all my intimates and acquaintances, and my wife's kith and kin, came round me to farewell me in my lifetime, and console me for my death, whilst I cried out among them, Almighty Allah never made it lawful to bury the quick with the dead. I am a stranger, not one of your kind, and I cannot abear your custom, and had I known it, I never would have wedded among you. They heard me not, and paid no heed to my words, but laying hold of me, bound me by force, and let me down into the cavern with a large gugglet of sweet water and 7 cakes of bread, according to their custom. When I came to the bottom, they called out to me to cast myself loose from the cords, but I refused to do so. So they threw them down on me, closing the mouth of the pit with the stones aforesaid, and they went their way. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease the telling of my tale for today, till it be morrow.